Welcome back to another season of The Right Dose, Private Applicator Edition. This new educational media episode season dives deep into everything you need to know about safe and effective pesticide use. We will prepare you to understand concepts essential to obtaining a satisfactory score on your Florida Private Applicator category exam. We'll break down complex concepts, answer tough questions, and help you confidently navigate the world of pesticide regulations. So grab your headphones, prep your sprayers, and get ready for The Right Dose, your key to passing that exam and protecting your crops, your health, and the environment.
Welcome to another season of Right Dose. This season we're going to talk about the private applicator license and how to obtain, as we did with the last season where we discussed the core based on this book, Applying Pesticides Correctly. This season we're going to dedicate a lot of time to helping you study for the private applicator license. The study materials that we're going to discuss are going to be directly from this book, which is called Private Applicator Agricultural Pest Control. And hopefully the information that we're going to provide is going to help you have a satisfactory test and eventually get your license. My name is Jonah Vasquez. If you haven't seen my videos before, with Luis Rodriguez. Both of us are agriculture agents based out of Hardy County, and Luis is out of Polk County. And we have been developing some of this study material for you, so you can listen to it at your own pace and complement what we say with what you have already studied in the guides. To start off with chapter 1, we're going to try to make it as painless as possible. A little context is very important. Florida is a state with a lot of water bodies, a lot of natural resources, and it is very important that we understand what we're doing when we are applying pesticides. Pesticides, by their nature, are designed to kill. They are designed to have an impact on the environment, on a species, and sometimes that impact can be extended to other species that we're not targeting. So to reduce the issues with pesticide exposure and contamination of water bodies, etc., we have laws in place that govern how we use, dispose, and apply these chemicals. You are studying for the private applicator license. In order for you to, get this license, you have to have several qualifications that we're going to discuss today. You're going to need certain study materials that we're going to expand on today as well. And our idea is to prepare you so you can then carry this license with the sufficient amount of education so you can know what you're doing and reduce the harmful effects of pesticide application.
The people that need the private applicator license are the people that are going to apply this pesticide on their own property, hence the name private applicator license. You are only allowed with a private applicator license only to apply pesticide on your own property, most specifically for agricultural purposes. It's because you have some crops or some kind of agricultural commodity on your property that you need to tend to, and then you need to spray pesticide to protect those crops. So that's pretty much who a private applicator is, and as Jonel mentioned, it's because you're going to be spraying restricted use pesticides. Also, administrators for specific farms are also allowed to get the private applicator license, but it's the same restriction. They are only able to apply this pesticide on that specific property and no place else. If you want to spray to another person's crops in other farms, then those will be commercial pesticide applicator licenses, and that's basically another test, another set of study materials, and it's basically under the same type of licensing through FDACs, but it's not the same license.
let me ask you a question about pesticides as in general. There are pesticides that you can buy without a license, and then we mentioned the restricted use pesticide. Can you talk about the difference between both of them?
Yeah, so a restricted use pesticide means that you are required to have a license in order to use it, transport it, and apply it. And the reason because they're restricted is because even by following label instructions, they still pose a bigger threat to the environment. So the government wants to make sure that whoever is applying this pesticide know what they're doing, and the only way they can achieve that is by making sure that people have their own license. Low-risk pesticide is something that you can actually buy without any license, and then you can apply on your own property without the use of any license. But most of the pesticides that we use in agriculture are mostly going to be restricted, and you probably will need a license.
What is the difference?
The difference is probably going to be the dosage. The ones that you can actually buy, and it thinks this is the same active ingredient, and that could happen. For example, Roundup. Roundup is non-restricted pesticide. If you want to buy Roundup, you can buy and spray on your house. But probably the dosage of Roundup that you're buying over the counter is a very low dosage of glyphosate. Whereas if you go to a pesticide that you're going to use for agricultural purposes, it's probably going to be a bigger dosage. And that's why it's going to be restricted, even though it's going to be the same active ingredient, for example. But obviously there's other active ingredients that are just going to be restricted because, again, they pose a bigger threat to the environment. So that's the difference between a low-risk pesticide and a restricted pesticide. It's basically how much harm they can cause to the environment, what it will determine if it's going to be restricted or not.
And it can be based on concentration, or it can be based on the formulation or packaging of ingredients that are surrounding that main ingredient. That make it more potent or whatever.
Exactly.
So let's switch gears. Since we're following this first chapter, I want to go through in order. Talk to me about what a student, one of our viewers, needs to do to obtain the private applicator license.
So to obtain the private applicator license, you need to complete 2 tests. One is gonna be the core test, which is the other videos that we have, which is we're using the private applying pesticide correctly. That's gonna be the study material for that guidebook. And then you need to also complete your category test. In this case, your category is gonna be your private applicator, and then you will need to use the private applicator agricultural pest control guidebook as a guide in order to study for this test. So as long as you complete both tests, you're good to go. Just remember that the only place you will be able to apply this pesticide is going to be only on your own property. But that's
in Florida.
And in Florida, exactly. If you want to go to another state, there's probably going to be specific licenses for other states as well.
And if you're in another state and you have this license, you're going to have to test here as well?
Yes, there's some states that you can transfer your license, but the majority of them don't transfer your license, so you will need to get in contact with Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to see if whatever state you're coming from, you can actually transfer your license or not. And sadly, the majority of state is not transferable, so most likely you will have to get your test in order to get your Florida license.
So I took the test, I passed the test, obviously I studied for it, and I passed it. How do I maintain that license?
So whenever you get your license, it's going to be a 4-year license, so you have 4 years of that license. Once you get those 4 years, you need to renew your license, and obviously you will need to pay a fee in order to renew your license, which is, I believe, is $100. It's the same fee you pay whenever you apply for your license. It's also $100. But if, you have 2 options in order to renew your license. You either retake both tests again, the core test and the private applicator license, or you can get your continuous education units, or CEUs for short. These are basically an equivalent of 1 hour of a class, and then you need to make sure that you have 4 core CEUs and then 4 category CEUs, in this case private applicator. How do you can get this? There's online training, in-person trainings. There's sometimes, depending on what magazine you're reading, you can read magazines, fill up a small test, and then send your results, and then you can get CEUs. There's multiple ways to get CEUs. We as agents provide a lot of workshops that provide CEUs, so you just need to find these different trainings. If you have doubt, you can always contact IFAS extension, and we can actually pinpoint you to a specific training that will provide your CEUs.
And put it on your calendar as well when your expiration date is coming up.
Yes.
Put it in your phones, because a lot of people call us here. Next week, my license is about to expire. I need to renew it, but I need to take the CEUs. So as an extension office, we can then redirect them to different offices. But if you're not looking, your license expires, and then you're out of luck. You're gonna have to get another test done or something.
Yeah, and look for your mail, because the Department of Agriculture here in Florida always send you a letter whenever you renew what is due, with the information what you need to send to them. You can send everything to them through mail, or you can just send them an email with all the information, because everything is in Tallahassee. So they are trying to make it easy for everybody to renew their license, and a lot of the process now is online, so just to make it easier for people to renew their license.
So chapter 1 talks about fumigants and how private applicators have different restrictions on how to use the different chemicals. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so normally if you are a commercial applicator, you will be required to have your own fumigant license in order to spray fumigants, depending on either their soil or a greenhouse fumigants, probably it's the same license. But as a private applicator, you can apply fumigants, but you need to read the label, because there may be some labels that are gonna require an extra training, and this training can be found on the website of the Environmental Protective Agency, or the EPA, and you will need to go online, take that training, and then you will be able to apply specific fumigants. For that, you will need to read the label and make sure if that specific training to apply a specific fumigant will be required or not. And this training is because the government wants to make sure that you know how to apply that fumigant. They want to make sure that you are protecting your handlers and any other person that's working on the agricultural area. And then they want to make sure that you are actually complying with the labor requirements, because that training will basically tell you and teach you how to go through that label, so you can use the proper equipment when you're applying these fumigants. Because obviously fumigants can pose a bigger threat if you don't know how to fumigate them or apply them, that they can actually cause harm to people. In general, yes, private applicators can apply fumigants. They just need to read the label just to make sure if they need to go to that training or not.
And you're gonna hear a lot about reading the label, because that is where you have the best kind of information. The label is a federal law. We gotta follow the label when we're applying some of these pesticides. If we don't, there's an accident, we didn't follow the label, then the fault is ours, not the company, not the neighbor, not the equipment company. It is our fault. So another rule that is applicable in Florida is gonna be the organo-auxin herbicide rule. Can we discuss that?
So this is a rule that was made in Florida just to avoid excessive drift, because excessive drift can actually harm nearby crops or nearby plants that are not the target organism for that specific pesticide. So in the past, a lot of problems were happening with tomato growers and sugarcane growers. Other growers were spraying their plants, and then a lot of drift was happening, and then this pesticide reached this sensitive crop and were harming them. So to avoid that, Florida created the organo-auxin herbicide rule in order to mitigate and then penalize people that are doing an excessive amount of drift. And something to clarify, drift is always going to happen. What we need to do is minimize the amount of drift. Some drift is always going to happen. What the law is going to penalize is not that you're making drift happen, it's just that you're making an excess amount of drift.
What is drift? For
Yes.
people that don't know what drift is.
So basically, you spray on my farm, there's a weather event, and we move that pesticide from your farm to another person's farm, and that herbicide that you spray may have a negative effect on the other person's crops or plants. So that's basically what the law is going to penalize. But again, a small amount of drift is okay and is legal, that will happen, but the excessive amount of drift is what the organo-auxin herbicide rule is going to be penalized.
Okay, why don't you define volatilization as well?
So you can have drift, either a spray drift, which is basically droplets
Or gas.
or gas that is just move across. When pesticide volatilize is basically when you have higher temperatures, some pesticide evaporate, and those gases can also move to your target location to the non-target location, and that is also considered drift. So we have two types of drift for the most part: spray drift, which is just water and droplets, and then we have vapor drift. And we also have particle drift, but that's not as common as the vapor drift and the spray drift.
So when you have a spray drift, means that you have high wind conditions. So this is typically in Florida, happens later in the day. So the closer you are to dawn or dusk, most days there's gonna be less wind. Volatilization happens when you have higher temperatures, not as much wind. So that causes water to evaporate and then become a gas, and that's how you intoxicate things that are not your target. So as a applicator, I have to look at my weather conditions and plan ahead for drift and how to mitigate for drift. If I have a big droplet, then I'm not gonna have as much drift. If I apply later in the day, when temperatures are gonna be cooler, after 4 p.m. or something, instead of applying at 12 in the afternoon, then I'm gonna reduce the issues with volatilization. So it's plan ahead, plan for events like this, because we're dealing with Mother Nature.
I'm gonna be talking about drift later on other episodes, because basically drift is something that the government of Florida wants to make sure that applicators know how to mitigate with, so we can minimize it as much as possible.
And this is where a lot of the complaints from the constituents, the community, are derived from. It's just an accident that we didn't foresee happening, and it becomes an issue in people's yards.
And that's why we have laws like the organo-auxin herbicide rule in order to mitigate for those issues. So there are other pesticides that you either are prohibited here in Florida, depending on what you're using, or maybe you need a permit in order to use those pesticides. Bromacil has been demonstrated that it can be highly mobile in sandy soils with low organic matter, and sadly, here in Florida, that's what we have. So it's very important to keep that in mind. So the products approved for use on citrus specifically have become regulated by IFAS, again, Florida Department of Agriculture Consumer Services, and their use is prohibited for weed control in non-bending citrus growth located on any permeable, better drained soils identified on the application site. For example, counties like Polk County, Highlands, Orange, Hardy, and Lake, most of the Bromacil products are going to be prohibited on these counties. But again, as we mentioned before, you need to follow the label and make sure where you can actually use this type of pesticide or not. And that Bromacil is just one of the examples. You always need to double check for local restrictions to see what you can use and what you cannot use on that specific county. And every county have their own laws and regulations, so you always need to verify your laws and regulations for the county that you are spraying. Another example will be RD products that are restricted. Mostly they are used for mite control, nematodes, and other insects. These products are closely regulated because they can be very toxic to humans and animals, and the potential for groundwater and food crop contamination. So anybody that wants to apply RD here in Florida must have their own permit. And again, they need to go back to FDAX in order to do the application. Whatever you're doing an application on RD card, you need to have your permit with you. And you need to apply for the permit before you do the application, not after. So you do the application, get your permit, apply your pesticide, and then whenever you want to apply that pesticide again in another location or something, you still need to apply for the permit yet again. So it's just a one-time permit for one-time application, and after that, you will need to apply for that permit. And those are just examples, but Always read the label and always check for local regulations to see what you can apply on that specific county or location that you need to spray.
So the final section on chapter 1 talks about record keeping. What are the essential things that me as an applicator need to keep up with, document in order for me to do a good job and just maintain my license and do the right thing?
So in Florida, it is required by law that any application of any restricted use pesticide, you need to keep records. So you need to keep these records at least 2 years in your facility. And what you're gonna put on those records is basically gonna be normal information of what you did. So for example, you need to put information about who was the applicator with their license number, and if they work for a company, the name of that company, and probably some kind of contact information from that company and the applicator. You need to also put what was the day of the application, what is gonna be the end day of the treatment. Maybe it was 3 days, maybe it was just one day, but you need to put how long was that treatment in that area, what was the location you applied, it was a farm, what specific area of the farm, or what specific grove of that farm you applied a specific pesticide, what crop you treated, the re-entry interval, so how long can somebody else can enter back to that specific area, and the exclusion zone, among other general information about the application methods and stuff like that you did with your application. And again, it's required by law that you need to keep those records at least 2 years after the application.
And if somebody from the government asks you for records that are before those, are for 3 years, then you don't have to provide them.
You don't have to provide them. You only have to provide the applications between 2 years of the application.
Okay. So this is chapter 1 of the book. I encourage you to contact your local extension agent if you want to have a copy of this. You can purchase one online, and we can get you the link on the comment descriptions of this video, so you can look for it yourself. You can pay and you can order it online. You can also drop by your local extension office. They should have the capacity to order one for you if they don't have it in stock. Contact your local extension agent if you have any questions on this. If you need to schedule your exam, or if you need a review, you can also call your extension office, and we can help you with stuff like this. This has been chapter 1 of The Right Dose, the second edition. See you later.